Welcome to a More Beautiful World podcast with Susyn Renee, a place for those of us with the desire to expand our consciousness, tap into higher vibrations of love, and to connect into a community where together we can make the world a more beautiful place. I'm so eager to share with you what I've learned on my journey in discovering how we're all connected and how what we do for one, we do for us all. Here, I'll be sharing my own experiences, knowledge, and expertise for how you can heal, transform, and ascend your being so that together we can create the more beautiful world we all know is possible. Well, hello, tribe, and welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we are going to be talking about rewriting your story and the importance of the story of your life. And I'm not talking about the quick overviews that we give to other people, where we're talking about our life events or facts that have happened in our life. I'm talking about the story that we tell ourselves. So today I'm going to encourage you to understand what story that you're telling and how you're telling that story to yourself. So we'll be, again, covering why it's important to really understand that story and also how you can rewrite the story if you need to really raise your vibration in order to better yourself and beautify our world. So as always, let's begin with a question. What's your story? How are you telling the story of your life? I really do feel this is one of the most important questions that we can ask ourselves. What's my story? And again, we're not talking about your little elevator speech, that you give in meeting others. We're talking about the story that you are telling you. And this is beyond, a biographical timeline of different events and facts of things that have happened throughout your life. But how are you actually taking those facts and events and integrating them into your being and giving them meaning? And how are you making sense out of them? This narrative of our lives and how we connect all of the events that have happened, and the ones we choose to give meaning to, and the things we choose to not give meaning to, but how we connect all of that together. That becomes a strong part of our identity. This story becomes such a strong and big part of us. And it can keep us locked in vibrational patterns and routines and cycles that can be hard to break out of without rewriting the story. So ultimately, if you're wanting to raise your vibration, right? If you're wanting to change your life, right? You've got to change your energy. And a big part of that, in order to do that, is to understand what's my story. What is the story you're telling? And also, in most cases, rewriting that story in a way that you want to relate to it, right? And you want to relate to this world. And in that process, it can be a huge part of your ascension journey and raising your vibration and increasing your well-being. So let's just kind of talk a little bit about how would we rewrite the story, if we need to. And what's the first step in that? It is you got to write the story or tell yourself the story. But I think we first have to put awareness around it. How are we telling this story of ourselves? So personally, myself, I like journaling. So I would write it out. You can, just kind of go through the story in your head as well. If you have a really good memory and can kind of keep track of the way you're telling your story. But just generally, once that story is written or spoken, right? I think that's when we can start to get really reflective and ask ourselves a host of questions to really explore our story and gain perspective around how we're telling our story of our life. And I think some of the things that you can look at, as you are identifying and connecting to how you're telling this story are things like, are you empowering yourself? Are you playing the victim of your circumstances? Is there more negativity or more positivity in your story? Is there a lot of lack and suffering and not enoughness? Or, is there some gratitude and abundance written through your story? Are there certain themes or emotions that come through? Does your story offer a sense of trust in the universe and trust in divine timing? Or is it more centered around fear and anxiety and worry? Does your story explain how you treat others, or how you have treated others, or how they've treated you? You know, does it express who you are openly and authentically, or are you hiding some parts of yourself? Are you harboring resentment toward yourself or toward others, toward different events or toward people? And how happy are you? In rereading your story, do you sound happy? How are you even measuring your happiness or your success? Right. So, all of those questions and plenty more can be explored as you have a story to reflect on, as you connect into your story and really go through it and ask yourself that. But I think the biggest question after you write the story and go through it, the biggest question is, do you want to keep that story or do you want to change it? Does this story work for you? Does it help you get where you want to go? Or could rewriting it make you feel happier and more empowered? Most often, it's going to be the latter. There's usually opportunities to rewrite our stories. And I want to share a quick story, not my story, but a story, um, because it's actually what probably prompted me to want to record this episode. I meet a lot of people, and they're everyone's a mirror of us, and I think everything happens in divine timing. And I met this really wonderful man, and he is a friend of a friend, and he's also deep on his spiritual journey. And I spent an afternoon into an evening with him and my friend, and he was very delightful. With a lot in common, a lot of good things to talk about. But in just the like kind of afternoon and early evening together, I felt like I knew his whole story. he was You could tell he was very attached to his story, and he wanted to make sure in meeting someone new like myself that I understood his story and what he was all about, which I was grateful, that he felt so comfortable sharing everything with me. But a lot of the story was wrapped around a lot of fear, and a lot of anxiety and a lot of playing the victim and, a lot of lack mentality. And I could feel, as a clairsentient, I could feel the emotions that he had connected to that story. There was a lot of sadness and a lot of frustration and a lot of defeat. And each time he would tell a little bit more about his story, this theme again of this anxiety and this defeat and the sadness was like coming through. And finally I had a one-on-one moment with him, and it was towards the later part of our get together. And I asked, could I offer you some advice, on your journey? And he was like, yes, absolutely. I would love some advice on my journey. And I said, you've got to rewrite your story and let go of this old story because it's not serving you anymore. And he took a moment before he responded. But as soon as I vocalized that, you could tell and I could feel in him, he knew what I meant. Here was this story that he had been telling about, traumas and bad experiences and things that all played into where he was at, where he is right now. Right. But he wants to go somewhere else. And so that's the thing I want to share with you guys. Like, as we tell this story, is it keeping you stuck in the same vibrational pattern and in the same routine and, you know, in the same energy space? Because most often it is. The story that we're telling ourselves is keeping us, in the same, kind of repeating the same old shit, different day. And so if you really want to change your life and better yourself and help to beautify our world, we've got to change our energy, which means we've got to change the story. Okay. With that, I do feel and believe fully that rewriting our story does help us, in letting go of shame and blame and guilt. And it allows us to really change our perspective on the things that happen to us and move from this victim mentality and this, oh, poor me, into seeing the gratitude and the blessings, of what happened. It can allow us to connect into lessons, that we've learned and really see why these things happen to us and developing, our strength or for growth on our spiritual journey. So I think there are a lot of benefits that can come from rewriting our story. Now, again, full disclaimer, if you have an amazing story and you really like your story and it makes you feel happy and you feel super empowered, maybe you don't need to rewrite it. Okay. In my experience, both personally and professionally working with clients, there always seems to be some opportunity to do a little bit. Maybe it's not a full rewrite, maybe it's some editing of your story, but still making sure that the story you are telling you and the way you are relating to the events and things that have happened in your life are helping you move toward a better future. That's what it's about. So again, we're going to talk about how to rewrite the story, and what's kind of the process of that. And I'm not, again, talking here about trying to omit, facts of things that happen to you, or this isn't about like spiritually bypassing your trauma or the, things that have hurt you, but it's about looking at the way in which you relate to them and the perspectives that you put on them. So we aren't like rewriting the story to be all roses and sunshine and to pretend like you had some perfect life, right? But how can we change your perception of it, right? And how could we get again into deeper gratitude and appreciation and love for the journey that you've been on, and for the fact that it has helped you develop strength and that you've learned lessons, and have had blessings from these experiences. So I'm going to kind of just take you through what I would recommend to kind of dig into this process. Just know that this is not a once and done process. I have rewritten my story and gone through these exercises a few times. I usually get in a mode where I identify something that needs to be rewritten and I work with it for maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, depends on what it is. And then I kind of sit back with my story for a few months and wait until something shows up where I feel I need to rewrite or edit. We can call it editing part of the story again. So you may find yourself revisiting this process a few times. Personally, I like reviewing kind of my story at the full moon. Because energetically, it's just such a great time to clear out and bring in and set some new intentions. So to start off the process, I think it is important that we start with writing of the story. So if you get out, some just paper, your standard kind of 8.5 by 11 paper, maybe it has lines on it. But get into a good environment where you can kind of sit quietly, close your eyes, have some time to yourself, and just get into a little bit of a breathing rhythm and kind of go back as early as you can remember, in your memory, and just kind of start to let your memories flow. And don't get stuck, on any specific memory and like dig into that one. Just let your imagination be vivid and flow, but also just kind of keep moving forward. All right. So keep moving throughout your story. So from there, write down the story. And it doesn't have to be like as if you were writing a novel. You can also, kind of take it notes or outline format, but make sure you're capturing the most meaningful moments. And, these could be different events or relationships, and experiences, when you maybe had a breakthrough moment where you noticed something about yourself or the world. You went through something that shifted your belief system, and perhaps even an experience, or a relationship or something that changed your identity of yourself. Anything that really caused the course of your life to develop, in some way, that is what you want to focus on capturing. So do this for like maybe 20 minutes. Again, the goal here is not to write a 50-page. Well, I mean, you could, if you want to write books, please go, feel free to do that. And this could be the start of your book, but try to limit yourself because otherwise you can get a little lost in the details. I try to keep it to a few pages and really just set like around 20, sometimes 30 minutes because I do enjoy this process. But go through that. And then once you have gone through the exercise of writing your story, capturing these meaningful, maybe even life-changing moments, then look to see if there's a theme that is in your story. What are some of the common verbs that you use or themes that are showing up? And you can even go through and circle or highlight some of the powerful words or emotions or these action, verbs that come through to help you identify the theme of your story. And you can go back to what I was sharing earlier about reflecting on your story too, and kind of exploring some of those questions, of how this story makes you feel and what do you notice from it. Really, really feel into that story. And as you identify the theme, ask yourself some of those questions that can be really helpful. Now, from there, once you have that, think about where you want to go in life and what you want to bring in. And think about what you could change the theme of your story to. Like, what theme do you want it to have? Is there something that feels more inspiring to you? Something that feels more powerful, more empowering, right? Um, you can even give it a title. If you want to title your old story and your new story, you could totally do that too. Whatever creative way you want to express, feel free. But I think it's important that we, if we have a story, maybe that's a lot around victimhood and, really being focused on life events that have happened to us, not for us. And we've kind of got a bit more pessimistic view on life. And we want to change it to be more optimistic. Make sure you build that into your new theme. All right. And then once you kind of have your new theme, so we've gone through, we've written the story, we've identified the theme, we know what we want to change the new theme to. Then you get to rewrite your story, which I believe and really feel is the most fun part of all, because this is where you get to go through again. So give yourself about the same time limit. If you did 20 minutes for your first story, do about 20 minutes for the second story, but rewrite your story from that new perspective of your new theme. And again, this isn't about hiding events that have happened to us or lying about anything, but just do your best to write your story from this different perspective, right? So, for example, if your new perspective, and your new theme is like life is an exciting adventure, and it's like your theme is adventurous and exciting, right? Keep on asking yourself as you're rewriting your story, if life is an exciting adventure, what did this event mean to me in my life? Right. So I think that, again, whatever theme you give it as you're going through these amazing, powerful, meaningful moments in your life, put the lens of the new theme on it and rewrite that story. Make sure it connects back to that theme for you. And then once you've gone through and rewritten the story, feel free to read it again. But I do recommend at that point you let it rest. Okay. Because we can get lost in this process. Um, but I think once we get that first revision out, set it down and at least give yourself a few days, maybe several days. All right. Again, I personally like to revisit this at the full moon time. Sometimes I'll bring it out in the new moon and the full moon. Um, but often I find myself rewriting stories around the full moon. But whatever, frequency feels best to you, but do rest for a little bit before you go back, read the new story that you wrote, and then start this process over, right? So you have your story. Ask yourself the theme that you identified there. Did you do a good job with the theme that you picked? And is there an opportunity to rewrite the story again and to make it, again, more empowering, right? So just you can keep going through this process and adjusting it in ways that feel empowering, um, but also keep it real, and keep it honest to your own story. Because a big part of, you know, this process working for you and truly helping you to raise your vibration, it is about being able to own your story, right? But we can create one that is meaningful and empowering and still authentic for us, and I think that is a big thing to keep in mind is that we've got to stay in integrity, in honesty, in our authenticity. But again, we can change, how we look at it. And I know I've rewritten again my story a lot of times. And, even taking a lot of failed relationships that I've had and looking at them now, man, do I see the blessings of those relationships and the lessons that I was taught and the gifts that came from those relationships. And I have so much gratitude for all of my exes because I know I would not be here today without them. So I'm not trying to pretend those relationships didn't happen or remove them from my story, right? I'm owning my story, but I've made it so much more empowering, and I allow it to really drive my happiness and my satisfaction and connect me deeply into gratitude and appreciation, which keeps me in a deep sense of meaning and purpose, and also a positive relationship with myself. Um, so it really does help to build and strengthen our self love and our relationship to self as we rewrite our story. So with that, I know that's kind of a lot, but I do encourage you, especially if you feel called to it, go through the exercise and rewrite your story and be reflective about it and truly bring in, what you want on your story. Because remember, a very important question to ask yourself as you're going on this journey, in life for spiritual wellness, on this journey to bettering yourself. An important question to ask yourself is, what's my story? And again, use that exercise that I shared to understand what your story is and see what opportunities you do have to rewrite it, to feel happier, to feel more empowered. And ultimately, I do believe once you understand that and you rework the story and you begin to tell the new story and you move forward, you can better yourself and ultimately beautify our world. So, tribe, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I hope you give this exercise a try for yourself. And until next time, much love to you, my tribe. Mwah. Hey, tribe. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this podcast, make sure to like the video below and then click subscribe so you never miss an episode. And remember, I've got lots of free resources available to you to support your healing, transformation, and ascension so you can help in making this a more beautiful world for us all. Make sure you check them out in the description below. Thanks again for tuning in, tribe. And until next time, much love to you all.